Hello, my name is Charles, and in today's video, we are going to talk about where thoughts come from. Now, depending on your worldview, this may seem a little weird or maybe a little different for each person on what they think, at least. But the truth, there is only one truth, right? We're just trying to get closer and closer approximations to that truth. We're just trying to figure it out. So, where do thoughts come from? Well, if we were to just sit down, right? If most people were to just sit down and do nothing, just do absolutely nothing, just sit there, maybe stare at the wall, maybe just do nothing, then thoughts would just appear. See, from the first person lens, thoughts kind of just come out of an infinite, just expansive nowhereville. They just pop up into your awareness. You could sit there for 10 minutes, and if you really tried to figure out, you could psychoanalyze as much as you wanted on the origin of those thoughts, but before the thought was there, there was nothing, and then it just came right into your purview. And if you asked, where do my thoughts go? Hell if I know. It seems that they just come right in from the first person lens, and at some point they just walk right out the door. As soon as you essentially stop paying attention to them, or stop, thinking them or focusing on them, they just waltz right on out the door. So it's kind of an astonishing fact that thoughts do really anything at all with just their air-like quality, right? They're so poignant and so powerful at times, and they have, they guide and influence how we act and behave, and what are the meaning of our lives even. But they just sort of pop into our mind and then pop right out. So that's from the first person lens, right? Where do our thoughts come from? And psychology will have, theories on our thoughts come from, our personal experience in our brain, the way the brain and has formed, and what we've eaten, and the chemicals that are in our system if we've drank things like coffee or taken a drug or medication, and then even the environment that we're in. We certainly know, right? For example, that even though on the internal experience of thoughts come from seemingly nowhere or anywhere, or just infinity, that if you don't know Chinese, you're not just going to suddenly randomly have a Chinese thought, or words in your head that are Chinese. So we know that partially our thoughts are, and the way we think is in relation to the environment around us, the language that we're given, the social customs and practices, that we engage in, and so we know that, and that our preferences and what we love and all that stuff is going to influence our thoughts, right? Our personal history, the sights, the sound, right? You're not going to have a thought or feeling that of disgust towards a bad smell unless there's something that you think smells bad is around, So we know they're not just, totally random, or that they don't have a rhythm to them, or even a personal history, or even, that are, so it's not just total chaos, right? There is an order and rhythm and pattern to it. I tried looking this up, right, and doing a bunch of research, and I lived this theory and that theory, right? Neuroscientists and people will be like, the thoughts we have are kind of the workings of the brain, right, in relation to the environment, or just the workings of the brain. And so, right, but part of you is like, huh, you know, okay, or I do know when I eat certain foods, or when I, smell certain smells or sleep a certain way, right? The physical things, they do impact, the thoughts and internal experience. But at the same time, right, you know that, like, okay, well, if the soul or the spirit, or just the fact that I am aware of my thoughts, and thoughts are kind of immaterial things, right? Like where is a thought? You know, if I'm wondering where my thoughts come from, and I know I have thoughts. I mean, I know there's stuff going on in internally, right? And it's not, you can't cut open your brain and be like, haha, right there. That's the thought of, when I was 12 and I, talked to my friend, right? They're nowhere to be found, but we know we're having them. So we're like, well, that's kind of weird. If it is just the brain and the environment, where are thoughts? Where are they? I don't know if that materialist explanation totally coincides with our experience, but it's not to say that it doesn't fully not coincide, right? Because there are physical things that do influence, the way we are thinking and feeling and perceiving. So it's an interesting phenomenon. And I think living with the question is probably better than some concrete made up bullshit answer, right? Because I don't know. I don't honestly know where my thoughts come from. And I don't think you, if you honestly asked yourself, where do my thoughts come from, know either. So if, just sitting with the question, where do my thoughts come from? And then living life, I think, is probably the best thing we can do. Just live the question. Just, be curious about it. Try to figure it out, observe things. Just kind of be contemplative and just sit with the question. And you don't have to take some textbook answer from either a materialist or any dogmatic person. You can just simply sit with the question and just see where it takes you. Just not needing an answer at an immediate moment or a specific moment, and just be open to observation and experience. I think is probably the greatest tool we have. So we know they're not random. We know that they have a rhythm and order, and a lot of them are habituated. And we know that some of it is physical and some of it seems non-physical. And we know that, your environment, plays a role in some of it. And some of it you're probably bringing it to, or maybe your genes and stuff. So, yeah, I think just living with the question and just, seeing what comes after. That's probably the best way. So I know I didn't answer your question, or when you clicked on this YouTube video and you're like, I'm going to know where my thoughts come from. And you were expecting that I tell you. Truth is, buddy, I have no idea. But I'm alongside and I'm going to, sit with the question with you. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you live with the question too, or any question that matters to you. God bless. Have a wonderful day.